All right, so last but not least, we have the dressing ceremony. So what was a dressing ceremony? The dressing ceremony for royalty in the 18th century was quite public, attended by blood relatives, ladies-in-waitings, ministers, and other important members of court and the king and queen's household. So the king and queen dressed in separate rooms with their own household attending them. King Louis XIV used this dressing ceremony as a way to keep an eye on his courtiers. To be invited to the king's dressing was considered quite an honor. In the 1770s, during Marie Antoinette's early reign as queen, it could take up to 3 to 4 hours for a woman to dress, as they had 6 layers that they had to wear. And then there was the time it took to put on their wigs and their rouge and their hats and everything else. The king, of course, had only 5 layers, and they were more simple than a woman's layers. So for a woman, step 1 was the chemise. So this was worn by both men and women, and even acted as a nightgown for both. Step 2 was the stays, the corset. Made with strips of whalebone, metal, or cane, the stays narrowed the waist once fully laced up. Step 3, a pocket. A small flat bag worn at the side and tied around the waist. They were worn alone or in pairs, so they were worn on just one on one side or 2. Inside, ladies most often kept a comb, some powder for their wigs, and maybe even some rouge. These pockets were accessible from the back of the dress. Step 4 was the peignet, and like we mentioned in previous videos, they were frames made of cane or metal that were attached to the waist, and they were most often an oval shape. Step 5 was the petticoat, or however it's pronounced. So this was an ornate garment worn under the dress. It was decorated only at the front because it was not visible from the back of the dress. And also it was very expensive to get these dresses dyed. So they saved money by only printing the front of the petticoat instead of both. And of course, step 6 was the dress. Composed of a low-cut, tight-fitting bodice and a full skirt. This was called a mantua in England and robe à la française in France. The mantua was put on like a robe and was opened up at the bottom of the skirt, which revealed part of the petticoat. The sackback gown, which was a less formal version of the court gown, was popular between the 1740s and 1770s. They had, these gowns had 2 pleats of material that started from the neck part of the dress and went all the way down to create like a sort of train. All right, so for a man, step 1 was the chemise. These chemises for men were originally calf length, and again, they acted also as nightshirts. Step 2 was the waistcoat, a sleeveless jacket worn over the shirt. Step 3 was the knee breeches, knee-length pants that were held in place over the silk stockings by garters or a knotted ribbon. Step 4 was the coat. The side panels of the coat, known as a juste-corps, forgive me if I'm saying that wrong, until the 18th century. They were cut away at the sides to show off the waistcoat. And step 5 was the tricorne, which was the hat. It was a 3-cornered hat, front, this side, and that side. It was pointed, and it had an upturned brim. All right, so that's it for my segment on historical fashion. Before I end this, I'm going to show you some pictures, basically of different shoes and stuff that they wore. And all right, so here is a dress from the year 1780. So as you can see, the paniers were still worn. They were slightly smaller. So this would have been a dress worn in England. And here is a dress probably from around 1785, late 1780s. So this one here looks like it's got a peigne underneath, but if that's the case, then it would have been more from the early 1780s. And here is one from 1787. This one is my favorite. All right, and as I mentioned before, in Napoleon's reign, the dresses wore high-waisted, simple muslin or cotton material and with puffy sleeves. So when I visited the National Art Gallery here where I live, I went to see the exhibit of Elisabeth Louise Vigée-Lebrun, who was a painter in the 18th century. And there was an exhibit at that art gallery also that they called The White Dress. And this is a picture I took while I was there. So this would have been an example of a dress during Napoleon's time. As you can see, the waist is very high and the sleeves are short and puffy. Very simple, yet very elegant. And that would have been from around 1805, 1810. And here we have a dress from the 1790s, 1795 to be exact. And this I also took at the exhibit. And this would have been an English dress. And again, here I have a dress from 1797 in France. This is a fashion plate that I found. So you see the coats, they're long. And again, another one here. So the fashion was still very elegant, but it was also extremely simple. And then we have the accessories. So no woman was complete without her accessories. Most often it was a fan, a hand fan. So here's a picture of an elaborately decorated hand fan. And here's another one. And I actually own a couple of these just because I like to hold them, and they're very handy for the summer when it's hot. And here is a pair of shoes from Britain between 1785 and 1790. The buckles on the shoe were made in France. And here is a pair of sandals, Italian and French, between 1795 and 1805. So women actually started showing off their feet. And those pictures are also ones that I took at the exhibit at the art gallery. Here is an example of the type of shoes that Louis XIV wore. So these shoes are actually ones that he wore in a portrait. And here's an example of shoes from the year 1773. The woman's shoe. French, of course. Then we have some boots from the 1770s. These are my favorite, just because I really love the color red. And here's a collage of some examples of some more shoes from the 1780s. So as you can see, the heel was a lot lower. All right, so that's it. And if you guys want to see, I also have a picture of what a sack-back gown looked like. So as you can see, the two pieces of material running down the back. This is actually a really pretty dress. All right, so that's it. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.